it's good.
We'll start with the endorsement again. My endorsement for John Hawkins. This is a lot harder the second time because I've already said all this, but Brinkley John to me is the safer choice, primarily because I've seen him in action. I've seen him run the department. He's really frankly started the sheriff's department in this server. He was, I know he wasn't the first sheriff, but he was the first sheriff that actually took the job seriously. And
Oh yeah.
there's one before him, I think, and then he didn't do much and left. And sheriff department wasn't even going to be a thing. It was going to be state police and PD. But I believe John pushed for a while, and they decided to do an election. He won, and frankly turned BCSO into the elite department at the time. SO was kind of like the guys. I believe we were the biggest department for probably several months, actually.
Right. Yeah.
And
I mean, I remember when I joined SO originally as well. While John had become the sheriff there, and it was thriving right before I left.
Yeah. I mean, we've known him for like what, 5 years. So.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Campbell, and I said this in the other recording, but I spoke to Campbell in great length. Said a lot of things that I agree with. Let me turn my radio off. Said a lot of things that I agree with. And it was really a hard decision because.
Can I just get another unit down here?
My God, some people. But.
I'm tabbed out, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, Campbell really said a lot of things that I agreed with. But so did John, and that's what made it hard. And the primary factor to me going over was that I've seen John personally, and I can personally attest to what he can do and how he can run a department. And I'm sure Campbell is able to run a department as well. It's just I haven't seen Campbell, so it's a lot harder for me to kind of put my full endorsement behind.
Exactly, and
behind that.
I mean, and like I said, for the same, for when I said it beforehand on the last recording, it's the idea of knowing, seeing something that has been proven. You know what I mean? We both know that Hawkins has done a good job running a department and then also being in those positions. And while, we've only experienced Campbell for a shorter amount of time, it is easier to make those kind of decisions off of your past experience.
Yeah.
So.
I truly believe that John will be the best candidate. With him being on military leave, I don't think that's really as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be.
No, I don't think it will be.
As the leader of the department, really patrolling is secondary. Because there's more than one way to maintain a presence. My presence is patrolling, and I try to maintain a presence in the departments, and I think I do a fairly good job of it. But, all John would really have to do is make sure he's communicating with his COC, making announcements, maybe even giving updates to what's going on in his training or whatever. Like, oh, I passed this or that, or I'm going to here. But just maintaining a presence. And that's really the big thing. And if John can do that, the fact that he's not able to get on patrol very often, really, I don't think that'll be a problem at all.
No. No, I don't think that'll be an issue. And we've been talking about this since it first happened, since it was even a thought in the back of John's mind to run for it. The idea of him not being here isn't as big of a factor as you said, as people might think. I mean, that's not the primary role of a department head. It's to make those decisions, to try to lead the department in the right direction for the people that get on. Obviously, it's good to see your department head on, and that is very important. But I don't think it's as important as what some people might think.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to. Do we want to talk about the fleet? Valor fleet is going to be better just because it gives a lot more options for customization.
Oh yeah.
And I like the Liberty 1 pack. I do, and I think it would fit for a sheriff's department.
652 attempting to locate a three-wheeler. I got him clocked going 15 over.
307, is it the black and color one?
You can't do that.
Time for it. I can give you his name if you want me to.
Okay. Anyway, the Redneck Valor fleet, I think that's going to be the good choice. I mean, you get a lot of vehicles, you get a lot of customization. You get the Weston and the Seton Rambar that he has to choose from.
Yeah.
And there's just so many mod kits that you get with them. They're pretty well made. I mean, the Redneck cars.
It's gonna be one Gabe Cooper.
We're about to just flip-flop back and forth because I'm tired of listening to him. You want to move?
Yeah, let's move.
Is that Reyes?
Yep. Anyway, now the Liberty One fleet I think would be a pretty decent fleet, especially for a sheriff's department focusing on calls, because it doesn't have AOPRs, it doesn't have a bunch of antennas and stuff. I mean, it just has a fairly simple full wraparound rambar.
Yeah.
So I think it would be all right, but you also get all that stuff and more with the Redneck's Valor pack, which he already has. So
yeah, that makes it easy. There's not a lot of extra stuff that needs to be done to get access to that. And one of the things that I think is also important with that is that the Valor pack from an SADPS standpoint, right? The Valor pack complements you know, our incoming vehicles very well. Having two Liberty light bars, I don't.
That's true. I'm sorry, I misspoke. They're SO's actually Liberty 2, so it's gonna have the same light bar as us.
Yeah, and see, I'm not as big of a fan of the fact that they would have the same light bar. I like the diversification of it, because that way it even gives new people coming in an option. You know, if they like Valors more, maybe that's the swinging factor. They like a Valor, and if they see two departments with Liberties, they're gonna be like, oh, they're using the same pack. You know, that's just an appearance thing even. So I think that's something that they didn't even think about, and it wasn't put a lot of thought into. But the general fact that there would be that both of us would be running the same thing, I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
So.
Alright, so another point I had here was Campbell's current position in SO. Because the point was made by Hawkins that, you know, Campbell's talking a lot about cleaning up the department, but why hasn't he already?
Yeah.
Because he is the undersheriff now. And granted, he hasn't really been undersheriff for long, and I don't see what's going on behind the department. So, you know, take this with a grain of salt. But I feel like if, and I mean, I know John plans on doing this. He's planning on, you know, hitting the ground running. Essentially, he's not gonna, you know, take weeks to clean this up. He's gonna start right away. And
oh
you
yeah,
know, him and his COC, they're gonna look at people. They're gonna start evaluating, and they're gonna say, hey, you just can't cut it. We still want you in the department. So how about a sergeant position instead of like a captain or a commander position? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think. Go
ahead.
Well, I honestly I agree with both candidates. Yeah, Campbell hasn't been there for very long, but I also agree that BCSO's COC has just been non-existent for so long that you need somebody to come in, and with Rocker you just need to tell him what's going to happen.
Yeah. And not to mention,
say,
it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be nice to have that outside person to come in and be able to see things from a different perspective. You know, Campbell's already very set in the sheriff way. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. And to have an outside source, I think, is really important. Now, don't get me wrong, because you know, being so in tune with what sheriff is like right now, it does make it a lot easier to make those decisions and not be stepping on toes. I know that was kind of an issue when I came back. You know, it was difficult. I had to take some time. I had to take a couple of weeks to kind of just sit. I had to take a couple of weeks. There we go. I had to take a couple of weeks to just sit back and understand things before I could start considering change, because, you know, sometimes I'd suggest something even and I'd just mention it to you and you'd be like, yeah, that's already a thing. And it was, I mean, that's going to be difficult. That's the one drawback for John, is that how unaccustomed he is to it already. But he knows what to do. It's just the outsider effect.
Yeah, I hear that, and I counter with, I think John is planning on coming in and overhauling so much that it really doesn't matter, you know, that like, oh, want to change this, but it already exists. Well, like there's so much getting overhauled. Like just assume everything's gonna change in some little way. So
Right.
I think with that plan, I think that's where it will help him.
Yeah, I mean that'll definitely be a very, like you said, very important factor for him.
Now, subdivision thoughts, specifically the game warden to animal control. I think John's plan is to just completely get rid of that. I
Gotcha.
would have to double check with him, but this is something that I definitely agree with on Campbell. I like the idea of there being an animal control because frankly, most of the time when the state game wardens get called, it's an animal control call. Like,
yep.
You shouldn't be calling game warden to deal with a stray dog. That's animal control.
Yeah.
Game warden is for more, like specifically
hunting and fishing. Hunting and fishing. Game warden is hunting and fishing, or park-related incidents.
Animal control is dealing. Yeah, animal control is dealing with, the animals.
The domesticated animals.
And game warden is still able to obviously deal with those, but it's primarily going to be the focus of game warden or animal control, which I like the idea of that over just completely getting rid of it. And I mean, I did pitch the idea to Campbell when we were talking, so I do take some credit for it. But Campbell did, in Campbell's defense, they didn't say whether or not he wanted to take it or he wanted to go with it. So I definitely +1 for actually agreeing. I think animal control would be very beneficial, and it would be a nice change of pace, especially for a lot of deputies.
Yeah.
Getting rid of game warden, whether it's getting rid of it or changing it, I think is definitely a requirement. First of all, they've lost their main game warden guy. That's Dewey. Dewey came over to state and is leading state game warden now.
Yeah.
But the only reason BCSO had game warden is because state previously was supposed to, and then they weren't doing anything. This was back in BCSO days when me and John were running it. So we decided to do it instead. And then we came over to state and we created game warden, and BCSO kept it. So that's kind of why they still have it.
Gotcha. And so it's more of like they don't really need to have it type thing.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think SO should have a game warden. I agree with animal control, or I even offered like a sort of county park ranger, you know what I mean?
Yeah, county park ranger or a county I think a county animal control is really good. I mean, that's a really good idea for the simple fact of, we always are like, all right, call county for animal control, but having someone to actually fill that role would be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I like I said, I think that would bring a lot to the table for deputies and.
Oh yeah, that would give out so much, like a specific thing that no one else has, because if I'm game warden, which I'm not, but I'm saying if I was a game warden, I just wouldn't want to go to any animal control things, I'd be like, leave that to the deputies for the simple fact of that's not what game warden specified. Yeah, that's not what game warden is supposed to be a part of.
652 traffic at 3031 before and after.
So.
Yeah. So we already covered the endorsement. Now, one of the last things I wanted to cover personally was the shooting training versus de-escalation. So John's in favor of specifically the shooting training, and Campbell mentioned de-escalation. Now, I don't think this means that John's against de-escalation training. I definitely think John's all for it, and he wants to cover it. But once the situation reaches a certain point, you just can't de-escalate it. It doesn't matter how you talk. It could be a mental issue, or it could just be somebody who doesn't care. They want to hurt people. Maybe they have a bunch of felonies. Maybe they're homeless. Maybe they don't have anything to lose, and there really isn't going to be any de-escalating that. And when you get in a situation like that, and you have somebody who doesn't understand, how to shoot, who isn't comfortable with shooting, who's going to hesitate, he's going to get himself hurt, killed, or one of his co-workers, a civilian, another officer, somebody else is going to get hurt or killed.
Yep.
Because he doesn't want to act, or he can't act. He hesitates. He doesn't. Maybe he misses. Maybe he's not comfortable with his shooting skills and he misses. I think the shooting skills are really one of the biggest, biggest points there. And I mentioned it in the when you were live with the debate.
Yeah.
Frankly, if you don't understand your gun, you don't know how to use it, you don't know how to reload quickly, you're an embarrassment. I mean, it's part of the job here in the United States. is a part of the job. Even if you never discharge it in the line of duty, you have to understand how to use it, because it's your life, it's somebody else's life at stake.
Yep.
And that's why I think that's the biggest part. De-escalation training is obviously very important, and I don't think that's something John's going to ignore. But at the end of the day, if I have a homeless guy who doesn't have anything to lose charging me with a knife, I want somebody who knows how to shoot, rather than somebody who's going to, try to whisper sweet nothings into the guy's ear as he stabs me in the neck.
There's too many scenarios in policing that requires more of a direct approach. There's too many scenarios where no matter what you say or do, that person is not going to change their mind on the harm that they want to create, and it really is as simple as that in the best way.